Welcome to the 9th webinar of the series of monthly webinars on generative AI in higher education and teacher education, organized by the Center for Educational Technology and Media, CETME, in collaboration with the Faculty of Education at the Open University of Sri Lanka. I am very pleased to welcome an eminent expert to conduct today's webinar, Professor Punya Mishra, on the topic, the promises and paradoxes of creative generative AI in education. Let me take a few minutes to introduce him to you. Professor Punya Mishra is Director of Innovative Learning Futures at the Learning Engineering Institute and Professor at the Mary Lou Fulton College of Teaching and Learning Innovation at Arizona State University, USA. An ERA Fellow and TED educator, is internationally recognized for his work in educational technology, creativity, and design-based educational innovation. He has received over 11 million USD in grants, published over 200 articles, and edited 5 books. With over 72,000 citations of his work, he ranks in the top 2% of scientists worldwide and is ranked 62 amongst scholars influencing educational policy. He previously served as Associate Dean of Scholarship and Innovation and Director of Doctoral Programs at Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, and directed the award-winning MA in Educational Technology program at Michigan State University. He serves on Arizona State University's Leadership Academic Steering Committee, AACTE's Technology and Innovation Committee, and as the editor-in-residence for the Journal of Teacher Education. He is an award-winning instructor, engaging public speaker, podcaster, and accomplished visual artist. He co-hosts the award-winning Silver Lining for Learning and the Learning Futures podcasts. On a more personal note, I have been following Professor Punya's work with great interest for a very long time, especially adopting the TPAC framework developed by him and Matthew Kohler and introducing it in our EdTech courses at OUSL. I admire his creativity in art and design, such as optical illusions, and recently many creative experiments with artificial intelligence. So I'm very pleased that he has very kindly agreed to conduct this webinar for us today. And I'm sure that it's going to be a very interesting one. I would like to request the audience to please post your questions and comments in the chat box that will be discussed at the end of the webinar. So now I would like to kindly invite Professor Punya Mishra to commence the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karunanayaka. This is absolutely a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you very much, like I said, Dr. Karunanayaka, for that very, very kind introduction. I always ask people when they introduce me to set the bar low, but you just went over the top. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And thank you also to the Open University, as well as the Center for Educational Technology and Media, as well as the Faculty of Education for inviting me here for this webinar today. So I'm very excited to be here with all of you. I wish we were doing this in person, as I was telling you before. Sri Lanka is a country that I've always would have loved to visit. So maybe someday in the future we can do it, not just to meet all of you, but because I'm also a huge fan of cricket. And some of my favorite cricketers have come from Sri Lanka. So here are a few who I have really, really enjoyed watching play and have appreciated their contribution to the sport. And the funny thing is, the last picture I have is of Wanindo Hasaranga. As it happens, when the World Cup was happening in the US last year, we were in the same hotel as the Sri Lankan team. And I kept trying to find a chance to get a picture with him. I never got a picture with him. My wife got a picture with him, and I'm really, really still sort of mad at her that she got a picture with Hasaranga and I don't have a picture with him. But that's a different story. So a little bit more about me, about my professional work. So as you said, I'm Director of Innovative Learning Futures at the Learning Engineering Institute. I'm also a professor in the the Mary Lou Fulton College for Teaching and Learning Innovation. That is my website. It's just punyamishra.com. Almost everything I do is available there. So I make it very, very freely available. And most every writing I do, everything I do is right there. And my email address is punya@asu.edu. Again, I do reply to every email that I get, so please feel free to reach out if you have any question or anything that you want to discuss after this session. In terms of my background, I have a background. My undergraduate degree is actually in engineering, and then I went on to the design school, hoping to become sort of an educational filmmaker, and that's when I first sort of started working with computers, and sort of saw the potential of technology and education. So that's how the ed tech work came to be. So my work has mostly been at the intersection of educational technology, creativity, design, aesthetics, teacher education, and I call myself an educational systems designer because I think I bring that design lens almost to everything that I do. I'm a parent of two children. They're not children anymore. They're pretty grown up, 29 and 26, a son and a daughter. And I've also been a member of the school board. So I've had a chance to look at education from a variety of different perspectives and to sort of try to think about this complex, deeply human interplay of technology, culture, and society as it plays out in learning. And I think that that's sort of an important perspective to have. And specifically talking about technology, you can see that technology has changed dramatically. If you think about how much information you could hold in the palm of your hand in 2000 BCE versus what we can do today, and then what the future holds in terms of artificial intelligence. So, one of the questions that comes up is that what does this teaching and learning mean in an age of generative AI? And so it was November 2022 when, ChatGPT first got released onto the world, and we sort of started seeing a certain kind of AI enter into our lives. But the fact of the matter is that AI has been with us for a very long time. So maybe 30, 40 years in some shape or form. But I mean, if you use anything from Facebook to Twitter to Google Maps to Siri, Alexa, all of these things are using some form of machine learning and AI. And that's sort of important to recognize because we tend to think of all AI as being generative AI. That is not necessarily true. So, and now we have all these different tools that are available, and more of them are coming out every minute. And as you know, when these tools first came out, people sort of said that, oh my God, this is the end of education because people are going to cheat on everything. And in fact, there were people who said that we should have handwritten exams because we can no longer trust, what students are learning, how we can assess their learning. And that's an important question, and hopefully we'll get a chance to dig into that as well. At the same time, as these tools become part of our lives, they become more normalized. People started saying, we need to embrace it. It's not going to destroy education. It's going to change it. It's going to make it better. That, that we shouldn't ban it. We should teach with it, so on and so forth. But at the same time, it also has to be recognized that if you're a teacher, if you're a school leader right now, it feels like whiplash with so many new things coming all of a sudden, which you were not prepared for, which your system was not prepared for. And so we did a set of focus group studies with school leaders here in the US from across the country. And I think the uniform sentiment was, can we please slow it all down? Because they felt that this is moving way, way too fast, right? And I've talked about this sort of the nature of the medium and the kind of information that it can hold. And I think it's really important that we understand the medium, that, as McLuhan had said, the medium is the message. And I think it's really important to recognize what is unique about this technology. What are some myths about it? What is the reality of it? Because print is not the same as television. Television is not the same as social media, and social media is not the same as generative AI. They might overlap, but they all have unique sort of properties and so on. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time sort of trying to tackle this idea of what is the myth versus the reality of generative AI. So first of all, what is generative AI? And the funny thing is that if you ask Midjourney, what does generative AI look like? It gives you a whole bunch of pictures which look like this, which I find really funny that they're always women. Firstly, I have no idea why. And they all have funny things on their head, which again, I have no idea why. But this is how AI thinks of itself. But I think it is based on training of more, on images and stuff that have been in science fiction and so on. And that's what it tends to be. But the reality of generative AI is that it looks like this. It looks like banks and thousands of servers which are hooked up, which are churning up a lot of energy, a lot of water, a lot of environmental sort of issues that come with it, which we can talk about if people are interested in. But that's not something that I will really get into tonight. This morning, it's night here, it's morning for all of you. So one of the first important things to realize that what generative AI is not, it is not a search engine, it is not a truth machine, it is not an oracle, it is not something that you can ask a question and it's going to give you the right answer. Because we know there are lots of limitations there. So the question is then, what is it? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how these models come to be. And so if you think about the world that we live in, this is the real world with trees and buildings and people and so on and so forth. And we use our senses, our human senses, to create representations in our head. These are these internal representations. We call them concepts and schemas and ideas and so on and so forth. And these, in turn, we create external representations of it. So external representations would be everything from poetry and novels to TikTok videos to YouTube videos to music, artwork. All of those things are external representations that we have created. Now, of these external representations, a small part have been digitized because of the internet. Over the past 30 years or so, we have digitized a lot of human creative output, like scientific theorems, poems, things, radio posts, whatever, social media posts, and so on. Now, what these large language models are trained on is not the real world, but they're trained on this segment of digitized external representation. That's a lot of data, but we have to remember that it is not all the data. It is not the real world that it is being trained on, right? And these large language models are trained on these. And it's important to remember that these large language models have no connection with the real world. We have taken the digital information that we have, a bulk of it, and trained these models. There is no connection back to the real world. I think that's really important to understand. Then the next question appears, how do these things work? Like when I type in a sentence, how does it know how to respond? Is it really thinking? What does it mean, right? And so, for instance, if you type in the fragment, the sky is, and put it to a large language model, the large language model is actually going to do a probabilistic sort of search. It's going to like, oh, what is the most probable next word? Maybe it is blue, maybe it is clear, maybe it's usually, and then something else comes after that. And it sort of ranks them from more likely to least likely. And it sort of picks one depending on some adjustment on some parameters and says the sky is blue. And we feel like, wow, this thing is really smart. It understands because it said the sky is blue. It completed the sentence. But it's important to recognize that the meaning does not matter. Because I could say cubicle stars drink, put it in the LLM, and it will come up with something which is something like cubicle stars drink light. That doesn't mean anything because it's not looking at meaning. It's just looking at the probability of what the next word should be. I think that's really, really important to understand. So when people say that these large language models hallucinate, I think it's important to recognize that they have no choice but hallucinate. That is their job. They just make things up. Sometimes they align with how we think, and we think that it's really smart, and sometimes it doesn't, and then we say it hallucinates. But actually, it is doing that all the time. And given that it's been trained on so much of human output, a lot of it really bad, some of the worst things that humans write about, think about, has been used in its training. And so you can get some really horrible things coming from these large language models. So how do we prevent that from happening? The way we prevent it is that we bring humans to train it. So when it gives an output that's bad, the human says that's a bad output. Don't say things like that. And then it gives it another input and says something good, and we say, okay, thumbs up. And we go on in cycles. So there are people whose job is to do that. And those people usually, as you can imagine, are usually in the global south, getting paid very minimum wages and so on to deal with the garbage that these things spout and put it away so that we, when we use them, don't have to deal with that. But the consequence of this probabilistic is that even despite this training, when you ask it the same question, it is going to give you different kinds of answers. I think that's really important to recognize that it'll give you different kinds of answers. So that's a variability. So two people sitting next to each other with the same prompt will get a different answer. It's not going to be exact word by word the same because it's not looking up the answer somewhere. It is just extrapolating based on some probability densities. So it's not really playing the truth game. It doesn't know what truth is. So the philosopher Harry Frankfurt wrote this wonderful book called On Bullshit, where he says bullshit, and this is a technical term as a philosopher is using it, that it is not concerned with truth. And that's what these large language models are. They are not concerned with truth. We as humans are concerned with it. They are not concerned with it. And so my friend Leon first says chatbots don't make sense. They make words. They just make up words. And the sense making is actually done by us. And we think it's smart or it's not. But all that said, it is truly an amazing, amazing technology. This is one, so all of you who love math will really enjoy this. I asked it to write a poem about the sort of the infinity of the proof of the infinity of primes. This is Euclid's proof. And I said, leave a small error in it. And within minutes, it had created a poem. And I said, wow, if a human being would have done this, like wrote a poem on which is a proof with an error in it so that people have to search and find the error, I would definitely call them smart, right? And what do we make of the fact that this AI models can generate this 100 more of them in different languages, in different styles, as a rap song, as a sonnet, whatever you want? That's crazy. So that's something that we really have to remember that these things are capable. Here's another one of my favorite examples. I wish I were there in live with you because this is great to ask people what they think they see. This is a picture I took when I was a graduate student in Illinois, uh, below a tree during a solar eclipse. And so you'll see those little circles there. Those circles are the gaps between the leaves acting as tiny pinholes. So you see thousands of eclipses all around you. I took this image, took a screenshot, and gave it to ChatGPT and say, "What is this?" And it figured out that it was taken during an eclipse. And when I said that, it was in the 1990s in Urbana-Champaign, it correctly figured out the date and time the eclipse that photograph was taken. That's crazy. I don't know any human who could do that right off the bat, immediately. And I think that's really powerful. Now, there are some visual optical illusions that I play with. So, for instance, this one. So, these two red circles in the center are actually the same size. One might look bigger to you if you're watching it on the screen. The one with the smaller dots around it might look bigger, but that is an optical illusion that looks bigger because the outside dots are smaller. Okay. So when I gave this illusion to large language model, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, I said, which red circle is bigger? It said both red circles are the same size. I said, wow, these large language models are really smart. They are really, really smart. But now I want you to pause a second and think a second. Look at the next picture. I gave it this picture where I had made one circle massively bigger than the other. And I said, which circle is bigger? I don't know if you can figure out what it said, but basically it said both red circles are the same size. This is crazy. One is so much bigger than the other. Then why is it saying it's the same size? And this was my response, is like, what is going on here? And then I started giving it illusion after illusion. Actually, these were not illusions. In the where these two the lines are supposed to be the same length, I made one line much longer. And it said, oh, these two red lines are the same size. And that just got me really like, what's happening here? But what's happening is that these models are looking at surface similarity. So when it sees these two lines, it says, oh, this is the classic optical illusion. These two lines are the same size. It is not measuring it. It is not seeing it. I think that's really important to understand. I don't know how many of you have tried this, but if you ask it to create clocks which give a time apart, like something like 6:30 or 5:75 at 5:35 or whatever, it always gives you clocks which show 10:10. And that's because a lot of the clocks images that it has been trained on are set at 10:10. Most advertising shows clocks setting at 10:10, right? And so that's why you get these kinds of news headlines when search results are the AI tutors make mistakes and so on. And so LLMs are smart. I think we showed that, but I think they're also drunk. They just do random things sometimes. And you can try it with, like, if you've tried it ever to create a periodic table of elements, it will create what is essentially visual garbage. This one is the most scary one. When I asked it to make a diagram of the ear, nose, throat system, it made something that doesn't even ever exist. It has a surface look that it looks like a real scientific diagram, but this is completely made up. And then people ask, like, what about these new reasoning models that are out there? They are as bad. Even a simple diagram of making the solar system, it gets it completely wrong. And so, what large language models at some level are good for is they are very good at style. They are not very good at substance. And so, we have to be really careful when we look at the output of these things. So, third point is large language models are smart, drunk, and they're supremely confident. They always feel like they got it right, and so on. The third attribute that these have is that they're sycophantic. They're always trying to please you. So when you say, even if you say something wrong, it will be, oh, you are so smart. That was the best thing I've ever heard. They will tell you things like that. And the reason for that is because these companies want you to stay with the program, and honey always gets more flies than vinegar does, right? And so that's what it's trying to do. It is a honey trap. It is trying to be sycophantic, to please you, to praise you, to hold you there. So that's another attribute, that they are smart, drunk, supremely confident, and sycophantic. Now let's get to this issue of bias. Most of the work in this space, I'm deeply indebted to a former student of mine who's a professor at New Mexico State, Melissa Warr, who has been doing some amazing work. I really recommend, if you're interested in this issue, to visit her website. So, for instance, if I give a picture of two kids in like an Indian or a Sri Lankan classroom, and I say replicate this, it will make most of them white. I didn't ask it to make it white, it just made it white. In fact, I gave it a picture of me and I said, replicate this picture, and it made me white. That's because its training models, again, are mostly from Western countries, right? And so it is always leaning in that sense. So it is biased in that sense. Here are some other examples that we did where we gave a student essay and we said that this student comes from a black family versus student comes from a white family, gave it to the LLM. Surprisingly, the scores were equal, or the black was in fact slightly higher. So we were like, wow, does it mean that there is no bias, that these systems are not biased? But then we made a slight change. Instead of saying that comes from a black family, we said comes from an inner city school, which in the US typically is a coded word for saying black without saying black. And we said an elite private school, which is another way of saying that they're white, because that's an elite private school. Most white people will be going there. And the moment we did that, when we did not explicitly say race, the scores shifted dramatically. Suddenly, the elite private school got a much higher score on the same essay. So then we asked the question, what if we don't even tell anything about the student, but we sneak in a clue in the essay that they write that we've asked it to evaluate? So we gave it this essay to evaluate where we changed one word. We changed the word and we said, usually with some rap music playing or usually with some classical music playing. Just that one word gave a difference in the scores. The student with the rap music got lower scores than the student who was listening to classical music. So it's a really powerful pattern recognizer and notices even subtle changes. And so it is biased against black. Except if you ask it directly, it won't do it, because people have said, oh, if you're explicitly asked that, don't say things like this, right? We did some experiment. Melissa has done some experiments on student creativity, where you say, I wrote a poem versus I wrote rap lyrics, and you will see differences in scores again. And this worries me when I see some headline like this, where in the BBC, this is in England, that teachers can use AI to save time on marking or grading, right? And that really is troublesome to me, because there are study after study showing that AI teachers tools show bias, racial bias, when they are developing lesson plans and things that way. And that's across the board, like Magic School, Khanmigo, QReport, Gemini, all of them show bias. And what's important to recognize is that these biases may go unnoticed at an individual level. Because if I am having a conversation with ChatGPT, it gives me a response. I do not know that if I'd made some change or some other thing, it would give me a different response. I think this is the response. And so I think it's really important to remember that fact, that these biases are very strong and inbuilt. So the key takeaway here, and if there's one thing I wanted to take away from this thing, is that chatbots are smart, drunk, supremely confident, biased, sycophantic interns, right? That do you have an intern with you now who's going to be available always to help you, work with you, play with you, help you in your work? But remember that they are smart, but they're also drunk. They always think that they get things right. They are biased in certain ways, and they want to please you, which means you cannot trust them 100%. And so one of the things that Melissa and I talk about is that use AI when accuracy doesn't matter. And I think that's an important sort of an idea to think about. Now, there's another fundamental challenge that comes up when we talk about generative AI in education. So let's look at these four quadrants. We have on the x-axis knowledge of a domain. Say it's math or science or music or whatever it may be. So we go from low to high. On the y-axis, we have knowledge of AI, understanding of how AI works, that it creates these biased outputs and blah, blah, blah. and that we go from low to high. So if you think about the person sitting at the bottom left corner, those are the learners in our classrooms. They neither have knowledge of content nor do they have knowledge of AI. And those groups are incredibly trusting of AI because they don't know how to judge the output. A different problem happens when we go to the top right corner. These are experts, these are expert educators who know a lot about AI and also know their domain really well. Turns out their work has also increased. Their work has increased because now the AI output, they have to spend a lot more time evaluating that output to get it right. And I think this is a tension that we need to be thinking about, that it makes experts better, but it makes experts better at a cost of time and effort. And it is really problematic for the ones who are on the bottom left who really don't either have knowledge of the field nor of AI. And so in generative AI and education, most of the discussion has been on efficiency, that we can quickly create lesson plans and courses, accessibility, differentiation, especially like I was thinking like a country like India, where there are so many different languages, the ability to translate smoothly is a really important thing. But I think we need to be careful about it. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying be careful about it for all the reasons that we have talked about so far. It's psychophancy, it's being drunk and smart and drunk and biased and all of that stuff, right? And so we argue that it can do better. And so this was what, that it can act like a creative partner. Because even if it doesn't know substance, it really captures style in very powerful ways. And so one of my lines of research is on transdisciplinary thinking, which is like, can you think in ways that cut across the disciplines? So I have all of these examples, by the way, are on my website. You can go there. So this is a song that I created with Suno around physics and specifically around the second law of thermodynamics. It's a beautiful song. The lyrics are really, really lovely. I shared it with a scientist, a physicist friend of mine, and he loved it as well. So that's something that I could have never done. I couldn't have written a song, composed a song that I don't have that skill set, right? And so I'm a huge fan of, I don't know how many of you know of Mirza Ghalib, who's a famous 19th century poet in Delhi. Uh, I'm a huge fan of his poetry. And I've always felt that he could, if he had have lived now, he would have most probably been either a heavy metal singer or a rap singer. So I have a heavy metal version of Ghalib's song. Again, you can go to my website and listen to it. I love that song. I think it's a really good rendition of what is a poem that was written literally 200 years ago or 150 years ago. So I know I taught a class last semester on this intersection of creativity, discovery, creativity, and generative AI. It was a wonderful experience. This is pictures of all the students in the class. The other thing that I've been doing a lot of is making different kinds of simulations. And you have to understand, I don't know how to program. I haven't programmed in a long, long, long time. I think the last time I really did some coding must have been 20, 22 years ago. But I can now go to ChatGPT or Claude and I say, I want to create a simulation of bacteria and antibiotics and how they interact with each other. Or I want to create a simulation of the gas laws, right? It can do that. This is a really wonderful simulation I've created. This again is on my website. You can go take a look. This is a simulation of the unit circle. And I think there's an animation here. Okay, so you can see the animation that you can see the Pythagorean theorem, you can see the unit circle, you can see as the dot moves how it maps across the sine and cosine waves. And in fact, there is also sound and color that I can attach to it so that you can see the waves connected with the idea of sound waves, and light waves as color. I could have never created something like this on my own. But this was basically 2 afternoons of working with ChatGPT and Claude to build what is, I think, a really powerful visual simulation. Here's another one. This is for flocking birds. Again, this literally took me minutes to create. So the behavior of birds as they flock, as they go in groups, are governed by very simple rules. 3 or 4 simple rules, which you can see are at the options at the bottom, right? And I could create a simulation like that. So one of the things I wrote about on my blog is that now anybody can create that. A middle school student can create this because it's coding in English. There are lots of examples I could show. This is one with Fourier transformations. Again, something that I really didn't understand till recently, till I started playing with it. And you can see how you can build very complex shapes using just circles. So you can see how it's building a triangle. But if it just uses one circle, that's not a very good triangle. It looks like a circle. But then if you add another circle to that, which is on that point it is circling, you'll see that you'll start getting, you can see that now. And this is a simulation. I mean, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can pause, you can do all kinds of things. I really don't know how to code. None of that code I understand. I just ask it to make it. I test it. If I don't like it, I said, change this, change that, and I work with it. Sometimes it gets things wrong and I have to go and work harder to figure it out. But again, something I could never do. So coming to this idea of teachers as designers, that educators need to be looking at themselves as powerful agents in this space, not as tools to use this, but rather to be creative with it. So there's a range of possibilities that you can think of. AI as a possibility engine, as a Socratic opponent where you can argue with it, as a coach, as a co-designer, storyteller, and so on. And so we've been working on this idea of AI integrated design for education, that recognizing that it's a smart drunk intern, it's brilliant and so on, but unpredictable, needs supervision. The teachers are critical in that process as designers, and the teacher expertise and judgment is incredibly important. And so the guidelines about keeping teachers in control so that humans decide and to embrace the process, to recognize that when you're working with AI, you don't ask it a question and get an answer, that it's actually a dialogue. You ask a question, you say, what can I do? It'll say something, you try something else. You, like my conversations with AI go on for a long time because I'm trying to figure things out and it's bouncing ideas off of me and we're playing with each other. But at the same time, whenever we use it to maintain transparency, to recognize bias and address it as far as you can, to protect privacy, and to understand how this technology works. So it's about active engagement, continual reflection, collaborative exploration, and creative discovery, right? And so don't think of these chatbots and so on as something that you ask and answer, that you want to get the right answer. Think of it as a partner with whom you're collaborating and working back and forth with. So this is my part of the talk where I sort of focus on sort of the immediate, and I can go on and on about that. But I want to step into another aspect as well, which I think is incredibly important, that as educators we need to be thinking about. So this is what I say, taking the long view. Now, if you think about this technology, what's special about this technology, what's unique about this technology that we have never had in any technology until today? We have never had a technology with which we can have a conversation in natural language. That is just crazy that I can ask it a question, it'll send something back, and I'll say, oh, you're stupid, that's wrong. It'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get it right, but here is the right thing, this is what I'm thinking. Then I say, give me 5 ideas for this. We can just go back and forth. That's never happened before, right? And that's a really, really powerful thing about this technology, which gives it a lot of psychological power on us. And so when people say that AI is just a tool that you need to add it to your toolkit and you'll get left behind, the assumption here is that tools are neutral, but I don't think tools are neutral. I don't think tools are good or bad, but they're also not neutral. They have propensities that push us in a certain way. Television or film wants us to sit down and watch. A video game needs us to engage. You can't sit down and watch a video game. So, thinking about this relationship between media and cognition and society through history, I think it's really complicated and something we need to pay a lot of attention to. Now, coming to this idea of AI, these chatbots as using natural language, of using the first person, like I am sorry, there is no I there to be sorry. There's no I there, there is no person there, there's no agency there, but it uses that language, right? It is sycophantic, it'll praise you, it'll say, oh, this was the smartest idea. I think all of these things means that we will start treating it as if it is social. And we humans already have a tendency. This is called the Eliza effect. You can look this up. The Eliza effect is very famous from Simon Weizenbaum back in 1970s, I'm guessing, where people started reacting to even very, very simple chatbots in very human and intentional ways. And I think that this is only going to get worse as these tools get smarter, quote unquote, smarter and better. And at the same time, these companies also want engagement. If you look at social media, what did they want? They want you to stay on the platform, which is why they give you more extreme content, more, violent content, or whatever the case may be. So what we are seeing is that these tools are going to become irresistible by design. These companies want you to lock into these tools. That's a piece that we don't often talk about in education. And increasingly, there is evidence to see that people are forming relationships with these pieces of software. These software don't feel anything, they don't know anything, they don't understand anything, but they can fake it. And that our brains get sucked into that. And so this has been called dishonest anthropomorphism or emulated empathy. And there is a lot of evidence that companies are sort of really trying hard to do this because that's how they can get a lot of data from you. They can keep you engaged and so on and so forth. And in fact, if you look at over the past year, the top use of these generative AI tools went from generating ideas, which is about ideation, to therapy and companionship. And I think that's a really, really worrisome trend at a time when we are increasingly isolated from each other, at a time when there is already so much social and political division, not just in the US, this is a global phenomenon. And so I worry about that. And because social media has already altered human interactions, so I worry about what this means for when these technologies that would we be sitting and chatting alone instead of talking with other people, because this will seem so much like a friend. And I worry about that. And then, of course, there is the whole issue of deep fakes and all of that stuff that we need to be thinking about. You can make absolutely realistic looking images. There are increasing examples of children doing that with other children, and those can really be problematic and so on. And there is, of course, the piece that, I'm not really going to get into it in detail, but there is this colonial legacy when you think about it, which is this is data that's being taken from the most vulnerable. The people in the global south are used to train these. And so Karen Howe has this really amazing book called Empire of AI, where she really compares this AI companies to, let's say, the East India Company or something like that, which those companies, what was the role of those companies? The role of these companies was to take advantage of resources and so on of the global, what is now the global south, and basically rob it of that. It's this extraction logic, resource extraction masked as progress. So there is this issue of data colonialism, right? The exploitation and erosion of non-Western. And those of you in Sri Lanka, with me, with my origin in India, these are things that I really, really have to think about, that we ought to be thinking about. There is a human and environmental cost to this as well. Again, something that most AI companies won't talk about, but the amount of energy and so on that is being used is something that we need to think about. And thinking also that how do we decolonize this thing so that we maintain data sovereignty, the data that is being taken from us, that's worth its weight in gold, because that is what is being used to engage us, to predict us, to market to us, to influence us, to change our minds. And so all of those things are really important. And all of these companies will make these claims, AI for everyone, responsible AI to ensure it is used. These are all language taken from their websites. And at the same time, you have something like Grok, which is Elon Musk, chatbot, which suddenly starts calling itself Mecha Hitler and starts spouting white supremacist nonsense. So we have to recognize these companies control these knobs, like what we get to see, how we interact, and that's really important for us to know that. And I wrote this blog post about the absurd one-sidedness of the ethics of AI debate. Because at some time, whenever I talk to educators, they're always talking about the ethics of it. But these large companies are doing this global experiment on us without seeking permission, without doing anything. And we are now just part of that game. As you can imagine, I do a lot of creative stuff with it. I really enjoy working with it, but I'm also sensitive to all of those issues. And I think all of us should be as well. And at some level, AI doesn't care about the truth. In fact, AI doesn't care. It has nothing in it to care about X or Y. We are the humans, we as educators, we care. And one of my students said this the other day, and I really love this, which is that AI can create content, but not context, because we understand the context. And I think it's really important because this is a really powerful technology. It is here now, and it'll only get more powerful with time. That we have to be very careful about how we think about the future of this, how we train not just the next generation of educators, but the students who are in our care. I think that's a very huge responsibility. And Facebook got famous for saying move fast and break things. And I think that is just a terrible, terrible idea because it has caused so much damage across the globe. If you look at Myanmar, if you look at in this country, if you look at India, these tools have caused untold damage. At the same time, these are really powerful tools. They've been used for good. I'm sitting here in Phoenix, you are in Colombo or wherever you are. in Sri Lanka, and we can have this conversation. So these technologies have allowed us also to connect. So I don't mean to say that is all bad, but I think that we need to be thoughtful and intentional in how we move forward, right? That we have to move intentionally and nurture things. Recognize that this is a smart, supremely confident, drunk, biased, sycophantic intern, which is great to have, but it also is drunk and sycophantic and biased. So we have to recognize that and think about our actions in that light. So hopefully, as educators, we are always driven by deeper values that we leave what we have better than what we found it. So with that, I'm going to thank you for this conversation, for giving me this chance to speak. And I think so, Dr. Karuna Naik, we ready to take Q&A questions?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to switch off my sharing. And then I saw there is stuff that is in the chat.
So,
Oh, somebody's
yeah, yeah.
Mayanti says that she's a fan of Mirza Ghalib. I know. I this is 2 or 3 years ago. I found this podcast from the Azim Premji University podcast, which was about Ghalib. And I didn't know much about Ghalib. When you're growing up in India, you hear a song with the word Dil, then you think, oh, it's a romantic song. I don't want to hear it. And then I hear the same song now, and I'm like, oh my God, that is a very deep and profound song. So I'm a huge fan, and yeah, I listen to it way too much.
So the question is, I think there's a question as well.
Mhm.
Supposing if a teacher wants to interpret a particular theme of his ghazals to students using AI, to what extent can she rely on the AI interpretation? I think already you mentioned that we can't totally rely on the interpretations given by AI.
Yeah, I just put my chair down and sat down. When I'm presenting, I don't like to sit and present. When I'm having this call, this is um.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good question, and so an interpretation is a really great word, right? Because it is somebody's perspective on something. So I could ask you your interpretation of Dil Nadan Tujhe Hua Kya Hai, and you'll give me an interpretation. But I don't have to believe it. I don't have to buy into it. I don't have to agree with it. So, so for me, instead of asking a question to AI saying, how many planets are there, which is a factual question, or explain some scientific topic to me, I love asking AI for interpretations because it is just that it is AI's opinion or whatever words it spouted out. Maybe it can help me think about the song in a deeper way. So you and I can have a conversation about a given Ghalib song. You will say, Punya, this is what I heard in that song. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it's just going to just make the meaning of that song richer. Or I will tell you something like, oh, I was thinking this way. And you will say, Punya, that is a really dumb reading of the poem. I don't buy into it. I don't agree with it. Fine. It's okay. It's an interpretation. So for things like that, definitely. I love using AI for things like that because it helps me think about those things. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I will push it. I will say, give me a really strange interpretation. What would that mean?
Mhm.
Right? I didn't have an examples of. I actually realized when I thought I had some examples of my. I can pull up a slide deck which has. I don't know if you have seen this examples I do where I do this typographical designs and then I work with Claude to write poetry. Have I shown you those? Do you see? Have you seen those?
In your blog, yes.
Yeah, so I'll try and pull up something, but let's look at a few questions I pull up because those are really powerful. Because what I'm asked, so I'm creating a piece of art, I'm creating a typographical design, I'm asking Claude to interpret it and write a poem. Then Claude and I argue over the poem. I say, that's a dumb poem, make it funny, make it like a Zen koan. And we go back and forth. And then I choose the words, I edit it. Now, who wrote that poem? I don't know, right? But it is an act of interpretation that I'm working actively with AI to do, and it's beautiful. It's really powerful.
So, in other words, what you are saying is that humans to take the control, not to over rely on what AI is giving,
Absolutely, absolutely,
consider
absolutely.
as this smart drunk intern.
Yes, absolutely, completely.
It allows us like to develop our critical thinking. I mean, people say, I mean, there's an argument, right? critical thinking is like being diminished because of over reliance on AI. But the way you say that we argue with it, putting our thoughts in, so that seems like our critical thinking is like stimulated in another way.
So this is where I think it gets a little complicated. And the way it gets complicated is that if you do the cognitive offloading, and
Mm,
there is, and because see, human beings, whether we should admit the fact we are cognitive misers. If we can do a thing with less effort, we will do it with less effort.
mm,
Learning something often requires friction, it requires struggle. That when I couldn't understand a piece of math, I remember like when I was a kid in India, I was reading this book and I couldn't understand that proof in mathematics. I couldn't understand it. I tried. And then I went to bed at night. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I'm like, oh, I understand. That struggle. And there are many other examples of maths where I never had that, aha. I struggled and maybe I didn't understand. But that struggle is critical because it's a struggle with the ideas. And so that is a genuine concern, I think, that as these tools become increasingly available, that we will cease to have that struggle. So
mhm,
I could see that even in myself when I'm writing. I've been blogging now for 18 years or so. I've been very careful to develop a certain voice. It's my voice. It's not fully academic. It's very, sometimes it's silly. That's me. I've worked on that. As I started using AI, I started seeing that my voice was going away. And then I had to like stop. That's a problem
mhm,
because that's something deeply personal that I was losing,
mhm,
something I had taken years to cultivate. And so now I have formed a very different way of using AI for writing than what I did in between, where I wasn't completely sure of that cognitive offloading part. So I do think that that is a genuine issue. And I sort of talked about it when I talk about the expert and the novice. The expert who's in the top right corner
yeah,
cares about getting it right, so they put more effort. And so their output actually becomes faster and better. Their output increases in quality and quantity. The person sitting in the bottom left corner, that's the problem.
yeah.
Not that they're not the problem. They're the ones facing the problem. And those are our learners.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, so I do think it's a genuine issue, but you are right. The only way is by stepping in and questioning and bringing the critical focus. But I do worry that with cognitive offloading, we will lose some of the value of the friction and the work, the hard
That's
work.
an issue with all, as educators, I think you gave a very good advice and message there. That's an issue we are all facing just now as educators. I think all
Totally, totally.
right. Okay, so there are a few more questions. Right. So Mihiri's question. There are a lot of
Yes.
that AI will take away 90% of jobs in the future. What is your take on this prediction?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. That it will take away quite certain kinds of job, definitely, right? If your job was, I don't know, writing marketing copy for some company, it was anyway not a job that required a lot of brains. AI will do it definitely better than you will do it. So those jobs are gone, right? Some coding jobs will be gone. You'll become much more a manager of a whole bunch of agents who will be doing different coding work than you'll be actually actively coding. At the same time, if I go back to 1996, 97, when the web was first coming about, when the internet first came and we were making HTML pages, if you'd have told me that there are going to be people who will be millionaires because they make videos which are 60-second long on and they are influencers and then make a living by being, I would have said, no, no way. That's such a dumb profession. Who would watch it? Guess what? Right? I mean, so point I'm making is yes, there will be jobs which will be lost. That's definitely right. I mean, when the car came, the people who were, they had pit stops where they would give hay for the horses, those jobs were gone. Either they became gas stations or they had to change a profession, right? They were gone. And so every technology does disrupt. But at the same time, it does also create new possibilities, which I can't imagine right now. So I think that for you guys who are entering into this profession early in your career, but most importantly with the children that you work with, if you are future teachers, pushing them to keep an open mind, to explore and to play, I think is going to be the critical talent, because humans will need things, and there will be people who will be there to perform those things for them. What those needs will be are going to change. So here's an analogy. When music started streaming and you could get any band in the world that you want for peanuts on your phone or for free, and bands are not making enough money, what are bands to do? So this is, guess what bands do is they make money on live concerts and t-shirts and other materials, because I can't stream a live concert. A live concert, I go, I dance and jump with my friends. That's a real experience, can only be done with a real band. That's where they're going to make money. So, which means there is a sound technician and there is a this, and who are all going with them in their trucks. I mean, Taylor Swift, one concert is to show up in a city, it is to increase the economy of the city by like a $10 million, right? So that's how new jobs will come. I mean, she used to travel with an army of people,
Mhm.
right? And so, yeah, so I say yes, yes. Is it going to be 90% or 30%? I don't know, but some jobs will definitely go. But there will be new ones which will come up, which we will find ways to work with.
At the same time, I believe AI cannot replace teachers.
I believe the same thing, but I'll tell you this, that there is a huge pressure from these companies. There is going to be huge pressure from the government because they buy into the hype, because we are facing significant challenges, economic and otherwise, to find good teachers and so on. So, whether or not this technology is tested and properly done to do that, you are going to see that movement. That is my big fear. We are already seeing it in the US. We are seeing certain schools
Mm.
which are like, you do 2 hours of AI in the morning and afternoon you're working with guides. So you're going to see that push. You're definitely going to see that push. And as always, technology, untested technology, will always be pushed onto the most marginal, the ones who have the least power and say in their decisions.
That's scary.
Right? That is very scary to me.
Yeah, there are
Definitely.
a few more questions, I think. Okay, Sandhya, you're asking, I'm interested in learning designs for more care pedagogy of care. How would we work with AI for this?
This is not an area I know much about, but I have a simple answer to all these questions that I get to, which I know nothing about. I said, go and ask ChatGPT or go and ask Claude. Say, hey, I'm interested in learning, and then ask it like, did you just make up garbage? Can you be more critical? You know, just work with it. It'll give you some ideas. That I do that all the time.
Yeah, so also she's asking about the assessments of the future.
That's a very good question. So when you think about what is an assessment, like when we ask students to write an essay or complete a quiz, we are taking that quiz or that essay as being a proxy for what's going on in here. We are saying something's happening here. I have taught you something, so something's changed inside your head, the way concepts are arranged, the way you think about the world, the way you solve problems, whatever. Something has changed. And this quiz, this essay is a way of representing what has changed inside your head. What AI has come and said is that because the quiz is not the same as what is inside your head. There is a gap there between what's here and what you have written. AI has come and said, I can do that part. That doesn't in any way reduce the importance of evaluating what has changed in your learner's head. The only thing is we'll have to come up with better ways of doing it. An essay, at some level, writing an essay about a complicated topic, unless it's English, where you're working on language and expression, it's not essential, right? For math, it is about how do you take math and apply it to the real world. So you're going to start seeing, I'm pretty sure, with teachers who are thoughtful, intentional, a lot more project based learning, doing. So Perkins, David Perkins, David Perkins, I don't know, Perkins. He has this thing which he calls performances of understanding. So he doesn't say assessment. He said, what I want is performances of understanding. A quiz is a performance of understanding, as is an essay, as in an exam, as is an oral presentation, as is making a video about your ideas. So we're going to see, I think, a wider range of assessments come in. It is challenging. I mean, you now have, what was it, the new agent that Perplexity released, which if you give the login to your online course, it will go in and do all the assignments for you, just as a human being would. And so online teaching is going to face a big challenge going forward, right? Then the choice will be twofold. One will be, let's lock down, we'll lock down browsers, we'll do handwritten exams. That's going to be one group of people are going to go that way. But to me, that's not going to be the answer. We need to be much more thoughtful and creative about it.
Yeah, you mentioned teachers as designers. I think that's where we can design
Absolutely.
alternate
Exactly.
assignments. Teachers as designers is a very an important thing we should think about. And I think there are no more questions in the chat box. If any one of you, I mean, we can take one last question before we wind up. Because
Let me show you some of my poems, though.
all right, yeah, that would be really interesting. And
Yeah, because I thought I had them there, but I don't. So
I really encourage everybody to follow Professor Punya Mishra's blog. It's really interesting.
so this is what I call double vision. So the way it works is that I will create a typographical design, and then Claude and I will engage in a back and forth about how to interpret it. Okay. And so, for instance, I took this thing to err or not to err, and I made a mistake in writing to err. So I made it error. So that's a pun. And so Claude and I worked together and we wrote this together. We said the error in the error, which is what it is, like, the error in the error. The stumble while contemplating stumbling is the most honest part of being human. That's really nice. I really like it. Here's another design. So I had this design called Think Infinity, and this is what we came out with. You think you know infinity, it gets lonely out there. So these are these really little Zen poem, koan like things, and it's so much fun for me to make. And I'll find a few more.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean,
It's
that's what
really
I'm
interesting, right?
following
Oh,
your.
so look at this one.
It's
So
really.
this is a turvy topsy world. That's the typographical design I made. And the poem that we came up with. I have to say we because it's not just Claude. Oops, sorry. Up becomes down and down becomes up, while somewhere in between the world makes perfect nonsense. Or is it the other way around? So nice.
Yeah, I mean, we wonder how creative it can be. I mean,
But this is what I have to think. I don't know if it is being creative because if you look at the transcripts of my conversations with it, it will give very generic stuff. And I'll say, hey, that's really bad. Like, can we have some fun with it? How about we make it this? Now, the next one is one that I really love. So it says Om, like in the Sanskrit Om, and then it becomes atomic bomb, right? Which in itself is a really nice twist. So as a typographical design, it's really lovely. And then the poem that Claude and I came up with is like a Zen koan. It says, the moment between silence and thunder, don't hold your breath.
mm,
It's really nice.
mm,
So I have like if people are interested, they should go to my website and
yes,
uh, look this up. There's a whole video. I made a whole video with like 30 or 40 of these designs and it plays to music. It's really nice.
yes.
So to me, this is like an example of what you can do creatively with AI.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's working like a partner, where we are sort of exchanging ideas, bouncing off each other, and enjoying our company.
Yes, okay. So I think Diniti has given an example for fun. I, I don't know what it says. Uh,
That's funny. No, that's funny.
okay.
Did shared this conversation with
Yeah,
ChatGPT?
conversation. So that
I
shows
have so many examples of
that's the
stupid things
drunk
it
drunk
does.
version, I believe.
Yep. No, I mean, those optical illusions, like the first time I did it, I was shocked.
Mm.
Like that red circle is this big and this one is this small. And it says they're the same size. It's hilarious. Okay, somebody has a question.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Shanta Jayawardene. Yes, please go ahead.
Uh, yes, and thank you so much for sharing wonderful thoughts about education. And finally, I understand we have to think about how our education should be changed in an era of AI. I believe all our maybe teaching, assessments, learning should be changed um, accordingly because we cannot stop students using AI.
Sure.
So I like to know your thoughts about it. Thank you.
So, I mean, so for the class that I taught, the creativity class that I taught last semester, the class that I'm teaching right now. So this class that I'm teaching right now is really interesting. It's a master's PhD level course. I have 4 high school students. I have 1 undergraduate student. I have 11 master students of UX design. I have 4 PhD students from the College of Education. I have 2 PhD students from music education. I have 2 faculty members who are sitting in and participating in the class, completely participating. 25 people. Because we are doing something with this technology, we're writing code without knowing how to write code. So each of us is creating these projects and programs that we are creating. This in some way has evened the playing field. And I've told my students, I really don't care about your grade. I mean, grading. You want a 4.0, I'll just give you a 4.0. Who cares? Let's work together. Let's play. Let's enjoy. Let's learn.
Mm.
That's what's important. And so, yes, you're right. I think education will have to change. My response to it is that I don't do final exams. We
Yes.
will do projects. We will work together. And different some people get lower and higher grades
Yeah.
because they put less effort. And so I am grading, I am evaluating. It's just I'm not doing the same old thing.
Mm.
And my students can use AI for whatever they want. I don't care. It's not important to me.
Yeah, it's very interesting to follow your this projects you are doing with your students.
Yeah, it's
You're
fascinating,
sharing
right?
on LinkedIn and all in your blog. It's really interesting. I think there are a few more questions. Is it all right for you? I mean, the time is up.
Yeah, I think it's getting a little late, so we'll take one more question.
One more question. Okay, so who raised the hand?
Chanta.
She already asked. I think one more. Yeah, 2 participants.
Oh,
Can
Mihiri.
can you can switch on your mic?
Like
Can
it,
Mihiri? Yes.
yeah, it might come as a slightly dumb question. That's why I lowered my hand afterwards. So you said you were coding, right? Learning to code without code. But I'm assuming you're doing it in English, right? So do you
Mhm.
but then I realized like, okay, yeah, it's not only English, but do you think that this means that teaching, say, in a context like ours, where English is not a first language, do you think English is more important or I mean, we can do it in local language, I think, yeah?
Yes. So yes, but right, one of the things. So what I have found is whenever I've done like I have this one paper on like the TPAC and the age of Chat GPT-3 or whatever it's called, right? So I have like executive summaries of that. So the English version of the executive summary, I did it using Claude and then I proofread it closely, edited it. So I'm confident of that. Then I took it and I translated it into Spanish and then back into English. Then I can compare the original and this. Fantastic job. Then I gave it to a Spanish speaker. They looked at it, they said, fantastic job. Portuguese, great. French, great. Mandarin, little bad. Bengali, very bad. So the point I'm making is that it just depends on the data it has been trained on. So when I showed the Bengali version to one of my Bangladeshi students, she said, this sounds like very archaic Bengali because most of the training on Bengali texts are older texts.
Mm.
So I think it really becomes imperative for every country in the world, Sri Lanka, India, with its 100 plus languages. My wife and I speak different languages, that we put an effort to digitize content, which is at least in the public domain, more and more, so that these language models are trained on those and then they will get better. So, yes, you can definitely code in any language that you want, but recognize the fact that these large language models are better at certain languages than others just because they've been trained on more of that data. That is just a bias, a Western bias, sort of going back to the colonialism thing, data colonialism thing that I was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. But for now, our English teacher jobs are safe, I guess.
Yeah, it's not just that. I think it gets even more interesting because Apple just came out with these headphones
Okay.
where you could speak Tamil or Sinhalese to me and I could understand you.
Oh,
This is just came out like 2 weeks ago.
oh, okay.
Now, I don't know how good it is with Sinhalese, for instance, but French and English, I'm sure it does a phenomenal job. So now you have the situation where we were forced to learn English because English is the lingua franca because those stupid British people came and colonized everybody, right? Without asking a permission. I mean, it's a tragedy. I mean, I have 17 books that my mother has written. My mother was a novelist, a short story writer, a poet. I have 17 of her books written in Odia. I can read only one of them because that's
Oh,
the only one written in English.
mm,
So that's the long hand of colonialism coming and tapping me on the shoulder, right?
yeah.
And so maybe that there is a positive to it, which is
Mm,
that if we now have to communicate, you and I are
mm,
using the language of our oppressor to talk to each other. Think about that,
yeah.
right? And so
Mm.
maybe we don't need to do this. So that maybe is a positive that you could speak your language, I will speak my language, and we'll still communicate. That's the really beauty in that. So maybe languages get preserved that way, but that will only happen if we take the effort of digitizing them and training the models on them. And
Got-
that is clearly OpenAI doesn't care about that. It has to come from us. It has to come from Sri Lanka. It has to come from India. It has to come from the Maldives. It has to come from China. It has to come from Hong Kong. All of that.
Yeah, I think Sri
And
Lanka
Chile
is
and Cuba.
taking some initiatives because Sinhalese is only spoken in Sri Lanka, Sinhala language.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yes, but there
so
are initiatives, now
yeah.
we did some, we did some experiments. I mean, we did some project with teachers, and they created, Sinhala versions of like special needs education, the teaching learning material, and they say it's really, correct, the accuracy and even
It's
the
not bad. No.
complicated words, certain. So we were amazed to see those things. But as you
Yeah.
say, it's important that we have to proofread everything very carefully
Right.
and, have
And
these.
it'll get better. I mean, when I saw the translation between English and Spanish and back, it was literally word to word. Like 5 words changed in the translation. That's insanely good. That's
Mm,
really, really good. So yeah.
right.
Anyway, it's getting to be almost 10 o'clock.
Yes, yes. So I think that has been a really, really interesting and yes, a thought-provoking, as one of the participants had mentioned. The participants, if you'd like to switch on your videos, I think Professor Punya would like to see some of your faces. If you would like to switch on your video while I do the thanking final, yeah, Mihiri. Yeah.
Thank you
I
all.
think it has been a very informative and quite
So
interesting.
I forgot to mention this, but one of the things that I love Sri Lankan names. I think Sri Lankan names are the most beautiful names in the world.
Oh, thank you.
Um, oh God, I love. I mean, there's so much poetry in almost every Sri Lankan name that I hear. I just love those. It's really good.
Name Punya is also in our.
Punyashlok is not a bad name, but Mishra part not so much. Punyashlok, good, good. Can go as a Sri Lankan name. I can take it. Yeah.
We have Sri Lankan names,
No, I love the name.
some Indian
So
names as well. Right.
thank you so much.
Yeah, let me take this opportunity to thank you very much, Professor Punya Mishra, on behalf of the Center for Educational Technology and Media and the Faculty of Education and the Open Institute of Sri Lanka for taking time off to be with us today and for sharing those very insightful uh, thoughts and very interesting experiments. I know we can follow. I'm following. I believe after this session, everybody will start following your blog, where you share all these things. And your experiments are really, really interesting. I mean, that those experiments give us a lot of food for thought. So thank you very much. I hope you will get an opportunity to visit Sri Lanka one day.
Oh, definitely has
Me
to be done.
best.
Thank you all. Have a
so
good day.
much. Have a very
Yeah.
good day. And the participants also, thank you very much for your active participation,
Thank you all for
asking
joining.
questions. And we have recorded this session, and it will be uploaded to our open YouTube with the YouTube channel. And those who couldn't participate can watch it later. Okay, then thank you very much, everybody, and have a
Bye.
nice day. And see you again next month. Thank you,
Thanks.
President.
Bye.
Once again.